2:01. We're going to wait for maybe 2 more minutes to start, so that more people can join. If more people are trying to make the bread here with me. So this is a super easy bread. The recipe makes 2 of these breads, which look at this. They turn super well. You really don't need anything more than all the ingredients that I'm showing you here, or do absolutely anything special other than maybe needing for 5 minutes. So it is very easy to make. It tastes real good, and it's I tried different recipes of bread that are much more complex, and honestly, this has been the bread that during this time I've been doing the most, because it's easy, and also it's the one with our family that we like the best to have here at home. So honestly, I thought that sharing this recipe with you was something that was going hopefully to be helpful for you, and I'm also going to be sharing with you some tips and things that I do, because I do bake a lot, and I hope that this is also helpful for you when you work with homemade doughs, not only for this but also for other things that you might be baking, in terms of the order of the ingredients, what works better for the doughs to leaven better, for the doughs to absorb better, first the water and then oil ingredients. So that's what I'm going to be trying to do today, and also for the breads to end up looking, like this. I think we are ready to start. Do we have any questions or anything there?
I don't see any questions.
Okay, so
everybody's saying that they're seeing it much better now.
Okay, perfect.
And we're good to go.
So, okay, thank you for being here. So what we're going to do first is that here I have yeast. You can use fresh yeast if you want, but this is typically what we all have at home right now. And this is 3/8 of an ounce of yeast. And if you're working with grams, as I do because I am originally from Argentina, these are 10 grams of yeast. So what I like to do to check that this yeast is alive, and also that it's going to work with the leavening process much better, is that I have here sugar. This is 1.5 tablespoons of sugar that I am going to put a little bit here of this sugar in the yeast. And then the rest, these are 4 cups of flour. Of course, ideally, you can use bread flour, but just all-purpose flour is going to work great for this, which is what I'm using today. So the rest of the sugar, I am going to add it here with the 4 cups of flour. And again, the amount of sugar is 1.5 tablespoons, which are 20 grams of sugar. And I put just a little bit here on the yeast, because this is going to help the yeast to become to leaven faster, because the yeast likes to eat sugar. Okay, so that's why I do this. Then I am going to put a little bit of the flour that I have here.
There's 2 questions. Can we
Yes.
ask the 2 questions?
Okay, yes.
First one, will it work with any type of flour?
All-purpose flour. I mean, by any type, do you mean whole wheat flour? If you're using whole wheat flour, I would suggest that you still use half for this recipe of all-purpose flour with whole wheat flour. If you just want to use whole wheat flour for this, I haven't tried it, but you're going to probably need a little bit more of water because it's more dense. But if you mix it, definitely it's going to work. I would use half and half when making this.
Then there's questions about the quantity of yeast.
Yes.
In tablespoons or spoons.
Honestly, I try to do the measurements today with tablespoons, and it's not perfect because first I thought that this was going to be 1 tablespoon, and honestly it wasn't. That's why it's 3/8 of an ounce. And if I would be using tablespoons, I would use 1 tablespoon and a little bit more, honestly. This is one of the things that I always recommend, that you use
the weight?
Yes,
the
like
scale.
you use
scale.
a scale, because honestly, this is what helps. I would like to tell you that if you're using, let's say, yeast that comes in little packages, it would be one of those little packages and a half, okay? I measure them, and honestly I wanted to give a recipe with the tablespoons, but honestly it's impossible.
The ounces work.
Yes, so I want to finish this because then I want you to see how this starts making like this. So I put a little bit of flour here and a little bit of water, and what I'm going to do is like I'm going to mix the yeast here, and literally in 1 minute we're going to start seeing little bubbles that it's going to show that the yeast is alive, and also this is going to help for the flour to absorb much better the yeast and the water and then the oil. So here, as I told you, I already put the rest of the sugar here in the flour, and then I am also going to put 1 tablespoon of salt, okay? And what I do is mixing with my hands here the sugar and the flour, and this is something I do every time I work with those that have sugar or salt, most of the times salt, because this helps for the yeast to work much better. As you know, the salt prevents the yeast to leaven, so when this is mixed, this is going to work much better when you are adding the yeast to the dough. And as you see here, you see this is already showing that this is pretty much alive. You can see the bubbles here. If you leave this for maybe 2-3 minutes, this is even going to be much bubbly, but we can definitely add this already, okay, here to our flour. And then I am going to add, this is 1 cup of water. This is warm water. You can definitely use, not hot water, because anything hot is going to kill the yeast, but it's cold water or hot water. For me, lukewarm water works great because it really helps for the dough and the yeast especially to leaven faster, okay? So this is 1 cup and a little bit more, okay? It's, I would like to say, these are 160 millimeters. So this is, you see, here I'm going to start. So now you start working with your hands. And of course, this is going to be a little messy. It's 260 millimeters of water. Yes.
Question here on the line.
Yes.
So little question about, again, the yeast, 3/8 of ounces, right?
3/8 of an ounce, yes.
Okay, perfect.
How
much
or
water?
If you have, it's 1 cup.
But how much water when you were activating the yeast?
Oh, it's just a little bit of the same water that you have here for it to help the yeast to dissolve mostly. It's just a little bit. If you want, you can even add the yeast here on the water that you're going to be using, and it's the same. I mean, that it's going to work fine. What I like to do is like to check before that the yeast is alive mostly, because you see when you bake and you see that things are not leavening properly and you mix all together and then you don't know why. Well, this is a way to check that your yeast is alive. And what I do with yeast is once I open, like if I have a big bag of yeast, I close it with a clip, and then I put it in a bag, in a plastic bag, and I put it in the refrigerator, and that really helps for the yeast to be alive for several months when you're going to be using it. So here, as you see, this is going to look a little drier, okay? But what I like to do, because there is only one ingredient missing here that I'm going to add at the end, and as you see, this is just like putting together this, which is oil. And for this I like to use sunflower oil, because sunflower oil compared to olive oil has no flavor, okay? But this is to your taste, of course. I happen to have sunflower oil, so that's what I'm going to be using. And what you need here is 50 millimeters of oil, but you can also use, if you have beef tallow, which I happen to have because last week I made the empanadas and I used for my house, and I did have beef tallow that I order on Amazon. So you can use any of them, okay? And here, when I have this, why I'm adding the oil at the end? I add the oil at the end because the oil waterproofs any dough that you are making. And this is helpful to know for any dough that you're making that calls for oil. Any dough with oil, you should add, and this is my suggestion, the oil at the end, because if you add it together, like when people make pizza, like they add water, oil, yeast all together, it's preventing the flour to absorb the water properly. Why? Because the oil waterproof the flour. So the results here, this is chemistry, really changes if you do this. So I hope that these tips helps you. I've been baking a lot, and this is something that I learned that really helps for my doughs to taste much better, to leaven better, and also to have a better flavor and texture, okay? So now in the end, I am going to add, here I have beef tallow, but for some of the breads that I'm going to be making today, I use the sunflower oil. But now I'm using the beef tallow here because I need to use it before it gets spoiled. So now, as you see, this is how it looks. And what I'm going to do, and we are going to move this, it's like I am going to knead this for 1-2 minutes, okay? And when this is soft, which already is soft, because as I'm adding the oil in the end, this really helps for the dough to become soft. And also at the beginning, before you didn't add the oil, the dough is going to look that it's very dry sometimes, okay? But honestly, yes, one question?
Yes, there are a few questions,
yes.
So I want to answer them. And here people are asking, hey, help out, Nico, what's going on? So I'm going to try to help out a little bit more. They're asking again how much oil goes into the big bowl. So how much, what quantity of oil?
It's 50 millimeters.
50 millimeters.
Yes, 50 millimeters of oil, or if you want to weigh in grams, it's 25 grams, okay? When you are using the scale, it's that. But if you're using this, a Pyrex, here it's 100 millimeters, so 50 in the middle, and those are 50 millimeters, okay? And I wanted to see if it was 1/4 of a cup, but it's not. So I'm trying to be accurate when I am sharing these recipes, So that is the reason why I am giving you these proportions like this.
Another quick question. The yeast, active dry or rapid rise?
I use active dry. I am not using, I never use the fast rise yeast, but you can definitely use it. The thing is that with that, this is going to leaven in like literally very fast. So I mean, but if you want to use the fast one, it's okay. I mean, so here when you see it like this, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to let it rest before preparing the breads for 10 minutes, okay? So this is going to stay here for 10 minutes. Then I am going to prepare the breads and I'm going to show you how. And that's it. You have to let them leaven and then you take them to the oven. One thing, yes, another
People
question.
are asking if at the end of the class you're going to share the measurements and the units.
Yes, I am going to post on my Instagram for 10 minutes approximately, okay? And what I wanted to show you here is these breads that you're going to see now that we're going to make super small balls, okay? That they're going to look super tiny compared to these. And these are two breads that I have been leavening for the last hour. And this is how it looks before it goes to the oven, okay? So I am going to put this right now in the oven, and what I strongly suggest you is like when you have the breads ready to go to leaven, it's for 45 minutes, 1 hour before you take them to the oven, is that the oven is preheated to 400 Fahrenheit for 30 minutes before you put this in the oven. I mean, this is a suggestion. It's not something that you have to do, but a really preheated oven really helps when you are baking goods for them to achieve a better texture, to have the real temperature in the oven for them to cook properly. So this is the suggestion I would do. I don't always do that because I would be lying to you to tell you that every time I preheat the oven on time, but that really helps. So now I am going to take these into the oven, and for a size of these two breads in my oven, and again, the idea is like once they have this color, you can remove them, okay? But approximately between 20 to 25 minutes is what takes in my oven for these breads to be ready. So I'm going to put the timer here and I'm going to set it in 20 minutes and check with the light if they are ready. And another thing that I do when I make these breads, as you can see here, we have one bread that I make like an hour and a half ago, is that I like to pre-cut them, okay? So I have them ready, okay, in outside if I'm going to be using them in the next 2 days, for example. But when I make two, because in our house we are a family of 3, I have these storage bags, and what I do is that I keep them, you see this here, and I hope that you can see how the bread looks. I mean, it's really soft on the inside, and on the outside it has this crust that it's not too hard, okay? And I like it for that it's not that hard. So what I do is like I put them here in a bag, and then I use like, well, I don't have it here, but I use a clip, okay? And I put this in the refrigerator, and I make this bread, like 2 loaves, maybe on Sunday or Saturday, and today in the morning we finished our second loaf, and it was amazing, and it was in the refrigerator, okay? So it keeps really well, and that's what I do. So now to start cutting and preparing this dough, to make the breads, what I'm going to do is like I have here a baking sheet, okay, that I only put parchment paper, and on the parchment paper, oh sorry, I'm gonna need a little bit of this water. On the parchment paper, what I'm going to do is like I am going to put a little bit of flour, okay? You don't need to put anything else. This is all. And I'm going to move this a little bit. And I don't know if it's been...
There was a question about, do you put water with the sheet in the oven?
Not now, but I'm going to put a little bit of water on top of the balls here that I'm going to be showing you. So it hasn't been probably 10 minutes, but let's imagine like it's been 10 minutes for this dough to rest. So what I'm going to do, and again, I like using a scale, but if you want, don't do it, or if you don't have one, and I am going to see how much they weigh, and I am going to separate these spreads, this dough, into, so this is almost the same, but it's because I've been baking a lot. But you try, and if you see like one is very different from the other, just remove a little bit and a piece of dough and put it into the other if you want them, you know, to weigh them. And here you don't want to touch this a lot, okay? Because gluten is already developing, and the more you touch right now, the more it's going to take for it to leaven, okay? Because this already has a pretty much amount of yeast to make this bread, and that is the reason why this leavens a lot. If you're making bread from one day to the other, let's say that you want to make this dough the day before to bake the next day, I am going to strongly suggest you to use like less than a half of the yeast that you're using here, okay? The more yeast you use, the faster it's going to rise. That is how it works with yeast. So here, if you see, I am making these little balls. As you see, they are tiny compared to the ones I just showed you that I took to the oven. And I am going to put one here, here, and the other ball, as you see, I like to do this, like close them. This is the same I do when I make pizza. And then I move them a little bit so that it closes on the bottom and you have a nice dough. When I make pizza, I do this exactly when I separate the little balls of pizza. So here, I am going to put this one here. And this is when you are going to make the cuts, because if you don't cut the bread, it's going to kind of explode, okay? So that is why it needs an exhaust, okay? Because this is going to bring water, and you need that. So what I do before cutting them is that I have here water, okay? And if you have a spray that is very professional, I don't have, so what I do is like I put a little bit of water here, then I put a little bit of water on the other, and on top, I am going to put some flour, okay? This. And now you are going to make the cuts that you like, and you can use a knife, like a sharp knife, and I like to do this, you see? You cut them here, and then I do this like a cross, okay? And little cuts on the sides. And if you have a blade, which I happen to have one because we redid our countertops and this is what they left. If you have a blade, this is super fast too, and you can use this, okay? This is a blade. So of course the cuts are going to be a little bit more professional, similar to the blades that are used in bakeries to make homemade bread. So this is what you do. and I just let them to at least double their volume, which is going to take approximately, with this amount of yeast, 45 minutes. And I put them in the oven. I mean, I have a double oven, but if you don't have a double oven, because I happen to have it, you just can leave this outside, okay? Leavening right next to your range, that it's going to help. If you turn on the range a little bit before you know you're going to be putting this on top, that it's going to help if it's warm for them to leaven faster and better. But I'm going to put this in the other oven that I have, that I put it on, I have it on warm temperature, but I turn off the warm temperature. I leave it for 5 minutes and then I turn it off, and then that's where I let this to leaven until they're going to rise, and you're going to see, now they look super tiny, but believe me that then they're going to look the way I show you the other ones before I put them and I took them to the oven. And it's a 400 Fahrenheit temperature, and literally it takes only like 20-25 minutes for them to look like this. And then you just have this bread, which it's been, great for us. What do you think, Nico? Do you like this bread? Have you been eating a little bit? If you see, here are the breads that are still, like, this is not...
See if you can see it from here. You actually
I don't know if you can see, sorry, my oven is very old. And I clean it frequently, but this is in between the glasses, so I cannot remove that dirt from there. But it's going to take approximately 10 more 15 minutes for it to be done. So I don't know if you have any other questions, and I'm going to be sharing the recipe. I hope that you make this, because look how this looks. It's a super fast bread to make, and we love it, and definitely it tastes much better than, look, I'm going to cut one here for you to see how this looks, and that's it. I don't know if you want to ask any questions. Again, I strongly suggest you to use this scale, because this really helps when you're baking.
I think people have asked questions about the yeast and
yes.
the quantity of water, and but you will post that in your
And again,
Instagram.
if I would be using with tablespoons and not weighting them, because then people ask me, I made the breads or I made anything that I have shared and it didn't turn well, and I wish I would have a way to say that yes, if you use tablespoons, this is going to be exactly the same. In this case, when you make breads or you make anything that is like, breads or bakery, using a weight is important. I mean, if you don't have one or you don't like using it, again, I would use 1 tablespoon, let's say, and a little bit more of yeast. But I cannot assure you that it's going to turn out like this. As you see, I did this, I am making other layers, and definitely using a scale really helps to achieve this. Or otherwise, I would be lying to you if I tell you like, no, you just put this with a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it turns. It's going to turn into a bread, but it's not going to turn exactly probably like this bread. Then your oven, how it works, it also might be a factor for it not to turn the same. But you're definitely going to achieve a bread by doing this. But I want to be thorough when I say this. And putting the water on the sides, I forgot to tell you this, is what's going to help for the bread and the flour to have this color, okay? So that's why I put some water when I was before doing the cuts. And do it before you cut the bread, because otherwise you are going to put inside of the cuts flour and water, and you don't want that when you're making the breads. So this is mostly it, okay?
People are saying thank you,
So
and
thank
several people
you.
are going to try it at home.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be posting the recipe fast, hopefully in the next 30 minutes. And if you want, you can follow me or you can check on the recipe. It's an open Instagram account on Taste of Real Food. And you can ask me any questions when you're making it, okay? Thank you very much. Okay, bye.